Welcome to Mushroom Mondays. I'm Mike, co-founder of Spore Life Sciences, and I will be your host today. Today, we're going to have a very special guest, Scott Tate, co-founder of Modus Training and owner of Tate Body Sciences Corp. He's focused on personal training and all natural methods to improve his clients' physical as well as mental health and well-being. We're going to be discussing the importance of regular exercise, optimal sleep, and nutrition. Hey, Scott. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity.
Of course, anytime. So very excited to get into everything with you today. You've been training me for a while. It's been going great. I learned a lot of tips and tricks from you, so hopefully we can share those with our viewers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we get into everything, can you kind of tell us what inspired you to go down this path of personal training, fitness, and wellness?
Sure. I think it's kind of a two-pronged piece. Like one, my family history for medical and well-being and longevity, let's say, isn't the best. A lot of chronic disease, cardiovascular disease, and cancer runs in my family. So as I got into my schooling at the University of Guelph, primarily started to learn about the importance of diet nutrition. Really, the first time that really kind of took a spotlight in my understanding of health. At the time, I was thinking it was a pre-med program. I was going to go into medicine. But as I learned about the importance of lifestyle, it just kind of became a no-brainer for me to go this direction. Can then combine that with a ton of sports injuries as a kid and through high school all the way to university, I realized that taking care of my physical body was also going to set me up for not only living a long time, but thriving for a long time. So that kind of pushed me down this path of biomechanics nerdery and then into personal training, and then obviously appreciating nutrition and the rest of it. I almost went to naturopathic medicine as my way in, but luckily I met a woman who's going that way. So my wife now is a doctor of naturopathic medicine. So I was like, you can take care of that, and I'll focus on the movement stuff that I just geek out about.
That's awesome. Sounds like, it's a family thing. You guys all got it covered, which is incredible because if you don't take care of your physical well-being, as a lot of our listeners, viewers know, it's hard to maintain that mental part as well, right?
Yeah, we're one. You unify a little interesting mechanism. You can't play with one without affecting the other. And I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but having a team player in the mix and having your family on board is crucial for making these things stick too.
Absolutely. And so, Scott, for our viewers that aren't familiar with you, how would you describe sort of your style and approach to training and coaching?
I think in one word, just awe. Like I just hold the awe for whatever that person is going through and dealing with, whether it's a neurological condition or a metabolic disorder, or they've just got some chronic pain and things that are frustration. I'm consistently in awe of what they're able to do, how their body can respond and adapt to anything. It's set up to push through these things. So I just hold that awe in what your body can do and try and set things up so that you can eventually become awed yourself at what you're able to do and just keep that momentum rolling. It's really a momentum game to stick with it for the long term. It's just being amazed all the time and chronically fascinated, I think, is how I do what I do and how I keep doing it and loving it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And, to your point, everyone is different, dealing with different conditions and physiologically different. So it's not like one mold fits all type of approach.
Yeah, and that's why I think the underlying thing is just your body can do incredible things. If you set it up for success, it just will succeed. So I just keep holding that often frustrating optimistic stick, but eventually everyone gets on board and they're into it too.
Absolutely. It's a great mindset to have. And, on that note, it's easy to get discouraged when it comes to working out regularly. What are some of kind of the top things you'd recommend to someone that maybe hasn't been on their A game on the regimen and is looking to kind of jump back in?
It's a really good question. And I think so much of success is not about kind of what you do necessarily or even how you do it, but when you do it. When is it in your calendar? And it doesn't have to be an hour in your calendar 4 times a week. It can be literally 5 minutes in your calendar 3 days in a week, or even one day. And just pick your when. When are you going to do this? And ideally, when are you going to do it feeling good? So, if there's a pain or a condition that lets you, sets you up to feel better later, then that's your time. But it's just pick your times and don't worry about how long or what exactly. Just when are you going to spend some time in your body, and then worry about what next. And that's where there's tons of professionals around to help you figure out what exactly, but just pick your times. And even if it's a walk, or you start with some squats, or if it's every time you go to the washroom, you do a couple squats, like whatever those when moments are, they just start to build up, and then you get that momentum.
Yeah, that makes sense because I think a lot of people have that kind of all or nothing mentality, but it doesn't have to be that way.
No, and ideally it's not that way, because eventually, like becomes a routine anyways. Even eventually at a certain point, whether you're a professional or you're starting from scratch, that you're gonna have a routine and a schedule. And it's so if you start with that schedule of when you're gonna do it at your best, the rest is I guess it's a momentum game, and it's just keeping that inertia going. And that's where having accountability people, or accountability buddies, or coaches, or those, there's lots of ways to keep that momentum going. But just figure out when your best when is. I think if there was one magic button, I think that would be the magic one.
Yeah, I love to hear that. And so, what are some of the things that people can do in their day to day lives that may help them perform their best in the gym?
Having routines and rituals, I think, is one of those sneaky little super valuable things. So, like I said, whether your when is a 5 minute walking routine, or a little interval, or a full big workout, having that ritual built in. So whatever food sets you up to feel best, and not slog down, whatever supplements help you physically and mentally feel like you're focusing on the game, like having those rituals, whatever your gym's clothes in the bag waiting at the door, like build a ritual around those times, so that you can feel even more kind of competent and capable and motivated to just go out and do whatever you've got set up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess nutrition also, of course, a really big part of that. These days, there's a lot of diet trends like keto, intermittent fasting, vegan, and paleo, and the list goes on and on. Can you explain a little bit about what these are and what some of the benefits or drawbacks of some of these trends are?
Sure. Yeah. I went back to school actually for applied human nutrition, because I knew how important it was. In that adventure of going back and then looking at other food ways, and also looking at the current evidence and all the research that's going on. So much of these different food ways are eventually boil down to managing calorie intake. There's a certain threshold or calorie intake that starts to lead you towards gaining weight or gaining muscle, depending what the goals are, or setting up for longevity if you're really looking at caloric restriction. So there are really different ways to manage your calories. Some people are more sensitive to certain foods. So there are, again, different food ways that might line up really well for someone's digestive capacity and sensitivity. And that kind of stuff you can't know unless you really geek out and get some testing done, or really be kind of a scientist with your food.
Mhm.
So they're all just different ways to help you find the energy you need to do what you've got to do, and maintain the health and energy you want and need. There's no magic bullet in those systems. They're just different ways to help you kind of slot in and help your body get what it needs out of that food. And some people can handle fats, and keto is great. Other people can't digest fats very well, so keto wouldn't be a great thing for them to a point. So I think there's no one thing, but there's the best thing for you at that time in your life, and life being that life situation. If you've got a partner who's really on board with something, it's way easier. Like we did the raw vegan thing for a while because we were interested in it and fascinated, and we had a buddy who had a great sprout growing operation. All the things lined up for us to do that and try it, but it's not for everyone all the time. And if you can approach it scientifically, they're all worth playing with. If you've got more information, you can make a better choice. But there's no silver bullet in that mix. It's more about getting the calories you need to do what you've got to do.
Right, absolutely. So it's one of those things. It's like some diets work better for some people, depending on whether they're prone to maybe digesting fats easier. They may lean towards keto. It helps them restrict that carbohydrate intake, and other people that just doesn't drive with them. And obviously, on a more vegan diet, it's hard to be high protein, low carb. What's kind of your take, by the way, since we're on the subject of like vegan versus having meat protein?
So there's interesting debates on either side. So my wife and I were actually just talking about this. Dr. T. Winkle, she's a very evidence-based practitioner, which is awesome. So we get the full geek out often. So one argument I've heard recently, relative to animal fats, is because there's enough crap around our environment, whether or not it's organic, things get stored up in the fat. So the more animal fat, there are more animal products you're getting more animal fats, and then you're kind of taking on board whatever happens to be around their food supply and their environment.
Mhm.
So avoiding those things might save you some of that toxicity to deal with. Our bodies are amazing. They've got awesome toxin management systems, but you can make that argument for staying away from animal proteins and animal meats. Otherwise, it's a digestibility game. Some people can't handle that many legumes and that much fiber, and it's really
Mhm.
hard for them, and it slows them down a ton. So again, you've got to right wrong for you at this time based on your digestive capabilities. My mom's an interesting example. She got a gnarly parasite situation at beaver fever. If you're from Canada, listeners from
Believe
Canada,
that.
tearing down dams in the back of your farm is one way to get a little parasite in you, and it messed with her ability to digest red meats. And to this day, this is 20 years ago, she just can't handle it in that way. So there's again, it's not an answer, but it's an answer. Like, what can you handle well? You're not going to know until you try it and
Mhm.
really do it consistently to know if you can handle it well. I think that's the biggest thing, is you got to stick with it for a while to really let your body adapt to it and monitor your abilities. So if you're not working out and not challenging yourself physically, it's hard to really know how well you are handling that food change.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, personally, I've tried sort of the vegan route, not like overly strict, but for weeks at a time. And what I've found for me, anyways, that I get really bloated with it and kind of feel weighed down, especially with legumes and things like that. They definitely mess with my digestive tract, and meat, I seem to have no problem digesting. Although, I am in tune with some of the issues surrounding meat, especially with factory farming and all that negative stuff.
Yeah, with a neurological condition too, you want, like, that's all the stuff that tends to get stored up in the fats can have an impact on that system. So you've got to weigh your options and then find the balance, and it leaves you feeling the best you can. It's one thing to kind of shoot for longevity. It's another thing if you're discomfort all the time. Like, what's your quality of life that you want to maintain? Because I mean, that's, I think, what's the most important thing.
Absolutely, and I agree. And a lot of people point to having either a slow or weak metabolism when it comes to fitness. And, we mentioned everyone is kind of biologically different in some way or form. So, what are some of the most important things someone can do in their regimen to help improve their metabolism?
So I think I'm a big believer in the power of rituals and routines. I'll come back to that idea a lot. So the placebo effect is an example of that. Like, if it's a 20-30% of the effect of almost anything you take is a placebo effect. If you reframe placebo as your body's ability to take what's coming in and use it for your goals, whatever that is, your body is incredibly geared up. So if you have any kind of routine or ritual, that you like, food that you eat or supplements you have, whether it's like aside from the actual efficacy of those things, having that ritual is pretty incredible. So, and then if you add something that's got actual capability to change your performance, like caffeine, really well researched, like creatine,
Mhm.
for example, the metabolic blend that you have at Spore, for example, there are some great known productive products that you can implement into that routine that's going to make a big difference. And then there's other things that might not be worth it. Like, for example, branching amino acids don't seem to be playing out in the way we hope they were. But there's a lot of products that do and are effective and can be built into that routine. So you've got the magic of that ritual and routine plus actually effective compounds. And then you've got an interesting recipe for a little extra kick.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's a balance between, proper nutrition and in that same kind of chain, obviously supplementation, and then as well as sort of, keeping that regiment and keeping the energy up that way. So it is maybe somewhat placebo, but ritual is very important for people, like on many levels. We found even with meditation, obviously, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The consistency is the other thing too. Like, it's picking a path and then sticking to it,
Hmm.
um, and making that part of your ritual and routine really consistently, so your body gets a chance to adapt to it too. As we're learning more and more about your digestive flora, so especially if it's a food or supplement thing, like, do it in a way that you can consistently do it for a good stretch of time, so you can really gauge the difference in your performance. And that's why I end up in the exercise side of things, because it's such an interesting litmus test for all of the things you do. If you're monitoring your strength and abilities and trying out a supplement, trying out a spore blend, or trying out caffeine a bit more specifically, you've got something to actually compare it to.
Hmm.
For everyday lives, having kids, like, there's so many ups and downs, but if you can dial in the consistent exercise routine, you've got a really interesting way to actually see what's working and what's changing your abilities.
Yeah, that's awesome. And how important is recovery? And what are some of the top things you recommend to your clients to ensure that they are recovering optimally?
So sleep obviously is the big piece. So having a real good sleep hygiene routine. So sleep hygiene, for those of your listeners who are familiar with it, it's just routines. Again, back to this routine and ritual idea. But these routines we do before bed or upon waking that help kind of anchor that sleep window. And for some adults, we do better with kind of 2 sleep windows. Most of us in North America and first world, we're on 1 sleep chunk. So whatever you can do to bookend that sleep chunk is the biggest thing. And then for me, at least, I've always, since that raw vegan experience, and my friend who was a big fun guy, he was a fun guy also. So terrible fun. He foraged often, so he'd always be coming out with awesome mushrooms. So I learned a lot about the adaptogenic effects of mushrooms. So one of the reasons I was excited to pop on is I've always been fascinated with particularly adaptogenic capacity of a lot of mushrooms and fungi and other supplements too. But those types of things can be a big difference maker in that kind of stress management window, which is really what recovery is managing stress. And it's easy to gauge exercise stress. It's hard to gauge those other stresses, life, work, relationships, kids and family. So having that sleep routine and having some supplementation that fills in those blanks can be really helpful. Things like magnesium or melatonin can be really valuable for some people to help anchor that recovery window in there.
Okay, great. So, I mean, it sounds like sleep is like super crucial, obviously, to recovery. Sure, nutrition, everything else plays in there as well. And with sleep, it's about, having the routine as well as possibly some supplementation. I personally take magnesium myself. And those are some of the kind of keys to getting good night's sleep and making sure you're on top of it. And I'm sure regiment, going to sleep at a similar time each evening and, making sure you're getting those hours in.
Yeah, the timing, the consistent bedtime for me is hard, just having kids and family and stuff. So I anchor the morning time. A lot of my clients are retired. They're older adults, so their time is theirs to manage. So they like anchoring that bedtime routine in. So here's when I go to bed. Here's when the phone's off. Here's when these things cycle down. And often magnesium has been a big player, like with a noticeable impact. And if you are taking a lot of vitamin D, just make sure you're running through your supplements with someone who can help you kind of go through the literature and make sure, like, vitamin D, magnesium, or something you want to play with and manage next to each other, for example. So just always making sure whatever you add something into the mix, that you bring it to whoever you trust to go through and make sure it's interacting well with everything, and not oftentimes supplements draw the digestibility, availability of other ones down. So you just want to make sure they're managed so everything's still winning. You're not focusing on recovery and then taking away from other parts of your capacity.
100%. And I know we touched on this a little bit, but just to reiterate, what are some of the specific supplements you'd recommend most to someone looking to either boost their metabolism or get that extra rep in at the gym?
Right. So creatine and caffeine are like the 2 most researched ones. Like, go there. You've got the metabolism blend. I like the energy blend. I snagged that, I think, before it was Canadian. I got the American version. Yeah, exactly. But so those types of blends, there's all of the pieces in there. Again, third-party tests, like whatever you do, make sure it's tested well. You're actually getting what you're getting. Again, why I was happy to hop on Spore. Like, you want to know what in it is what's in it. But yeah, so that metabolism blend, creatine, and caffeine would be the 3 that I know have enough pieces in there at the appropriate dose to make a difference. Is the other piece. So your blend has that. A lot of blends don't, or a lot of other supplements, there's not the effective dose. So again, just take it to whoever you're working with, show them what's in it so they can help you get the right dose in there. That's a big part. Like, having a little espresso is not going to get you the caffeine you need to actually change your performance to a point. So the dosing becomes really important with any of those performance aids.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know there's a lot of kind of, hate to say it, but kind of shady supplements on the market that either misrepresent what's in it, or give you such a small dose that it doesn't actually make a difference in your performance or routine.
Yeah, we had a Dr. Bencker when I was at University of Guelph. He ran a great course in functional foods and nutraceuticals, and he took us through it was like 10 of the top supplement makers at the time. This is 10 years ago. Granted, more than that. Sorry, it's about 20 years ago almost. It's crazy how time goes. But he just land-based it. Like, the top 10 is like, there's a lot of Brazilian houseplant in these, on testing. Like, this isn't bioavailable at all because this is what's in it, and here's how it outcompetes things. So yeah, doing the due diligence, or finding a good company that does, again, like Spore or if you go for a caffeine supplement or creatine supplement, just look for that third-party tested piece, or go through the website and make sure you know you're getting what you're getting.
Absolutely. So if someone wants to learn more about you or your programs, where can they find you?
So Tate Body Sciences is the website that I'm most around, and then Instagram I'm playing on there more and more. But if you DM me on any one of those, they'll track me down. I'll send you some show notes and stuff. We're working on a nudge service. I'm geeking out on that nutrition lately, so sending a text message, momentum to our cell phone number will get you onto a little nudge list. So we just, again, you tell us when you're planning to work out, and we'll give you the little pokes and stuff to make sure you're doing it to get that momentum going. But yeah, Tate Body Sciences on Instagram or Facebook, or just the website is the best way to track us down. And then we usually do things through a first call. So have a chat and get to know you and figure out what you're working on. And we'll help you choose what's best, like whether it's dialing in supplements or going on the food and nutrition stuff first, or diving into the movement piece.
Absolutely. And love the nudge service, because so much of this really is psychology. And, even something as subtle and small as a nudge can make a big difference to people.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. Like, so even subscription, like having a subscription service, it's coming. So you're going to stay on it and be consistent with it and actually see the results. So those types of options are super valuable. Just, it's there. You can set it and forget it.
Yeah.
Easy infomercial in the background, but it's super valuable. It's there, and it's there at the door all the time. There's a fascinating story from this ballet coach, ballet instructor. I think she's a famous ballerina herself, but after retirement, years of movement, she had a cab come to her house every morning. It was paid for regardless, to make sure she was in there. Like, that was her nudge. So you got to find your way. And this is a human who loved movement, world-renowned movement expert, but she wasn't going unless there was a nudge there. So it kind of like, find your when, find your routine, whether it's a supplement or a food way or whatever. Just find that thing that gets you going.
Awesome. Well, Scott, thanks so much for joining us on Mushroom Mondays and giving us a crash course on fitness and metabolic health. To our audience, thank you all for joining us today with our guest, Scott Tate. Remember to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get notified when we go live or have a new episode of Mushroom Mondays. I'm Mike Zabit, co-founder of Spore Life Sciences and host of Mushroom Mondays with Spore, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Scott. Take care.
My pleasure. We'll see you soon, man.
Bye-bye.